The rap world is on fire, and right now, all eyes are on Jim Jones. Tensions have reached an all-time high as Max B's shocking new alliance with Cameron sends shockwaves through the streets, forcing friends, foes, and fans alike to pick a side. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more chaotic, Drake is suddenly dragged into the middle of this explosive feud. Rumors have been swirling non-stop about Big U's funeral, with stories flying in every direction. But today, the truth comes out, and it's far from what anyone expected. The betrayal, the alliances, the whispers behind closed doors, everything is being laid bare. Jim Jones is not holding back, and neither are the others. In this video, we'll break down every secret move, every heated exchange, and every hidden angle behind this growing war. Who's really loyal? Who's playing games? And what does this mean for the future of the Harlem rap scene? Get ready, because this isn't just a story about music, it's a story about power, respect, and the battles that shake an entire community. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see the full picture of a feud that could redefine everything we thought we knew about loyalty in the rap game. Brace yourselves. The war has begun, and nobody is safe. The streets of Harlem have always been alive with stories of loyalty, betrayal, and the hustle. But nothing compares to the storm brewing around Jim Jones. Known for his sharp mind and fearless attitude, Jim has always commanded respect in the rap scene. Yet recent events have tested even his patience. The whispers started months ago. Rumors of alliances forming in the shadows, of deals struck behind closed doors, and of friends quietly picking sides. At the center of it all is Max B, whose moves in recent weeks have sent tremors through the community. It began subtly, with Max B meeting with figures nobody expected. Cameras may have missed it, but the streets noticed. Cameron, once considered an ally to Jim, suddenly spotted with Max B in public settings that suggested a new partnership, a union that many saw as a direct challenge to Jim's influence. Every handshake, every smile, every casual conversation seemed loaded with hidden meaning, and the fans could feel the tension simmering. Social media buzzed with speculation. Who could be trusted? Who was playing both sides? And most importantly, what was Jim going to do about it? Meanwhile, news of Drake being drawn into this situation added a layer of unpredictability. While Drake had never been directly involved in Harlem's internal rap politics, his reputation as a neutral yet powerful figure meant that his stance could tip the scales. The mere suggestion that Drake might have to choose a side sent shockwaves through the fan base. Every post, every tweet, every comment online was dissected, analyzed, and argued over by fans and insiders alike. People began to watch every movement, trying to predict the next chapter in a story that had already become legendary. The tension wasn't just online. The streets were buzzing. Those close to Jim Jones reported that he was visibly agitated. Meetings that were once casual became intense strategy sessions. Calls that had previously been routine turned into discussions filled with caution and suspicion. It was clear nothing in Harlem's rap scene would remain the same. Friends were no longer just friends. Allies were weighing loyalties, and every decision had consequences that could shake reputations, careers, and even personal relationships. Through it all, Max B seemed calm. Publicly, he maintained a composed image. But those who watched him closely noticed subtle signs, glances exchanged with Cameron, private discussions overheard at events, and sudden appearances in unexpected places. These small actions spoke volumes. It wasn't just about music. It was about influence, power, and who would control the narrative in a scene where image mattered as much as talent. Even the rumors about Big U's funeral added a strange intensity to the story. In communities like Harlem, respect and legacy carry enormous weight. Any misinformation or exaggeration surrounding such events can ignite debates, fan reactions, and tension among artists. And while the funeral story was largely untrue, it acted as a catalyst, keeping the spotlight on every individual involved. Fans, journalists, and insiders watched closely. trying to understand where allegiances lay and what moves were planned next. As the sun set over the city, Harlem seemed almost on edge. Every block, every corner, every studio whispered its own version of the story. Jim Jones, ever alert, knew that in this world, timing was everything. One wrong step could mean losing credibility, influence, or even friends. And Max B, with his new alliance, had made it clear that he was ready to play the game strategically. Leaving Jim and others scrambling to respond, the narrative had grown beyond a simple feud. It was now a full-scale chess game with players thinking several moves ahead, analyzing every reaction and anticipating consequences. Every meeting, every handshake, every social post became a potential headline, a clue, or a trap. It was a story about loyalty tested under pressure, alliances forming and breaking, and the delicate balance of power in a world where reputation could be built or destroyed in an instant. For Jim Jones, the days ahead would not be simple. Decisions had to be made carefully. Friends would be tested. Rivals would watch and wait. And through it all, the music, the very thing that had always defined this world, would serve as the backdrop for a drama that was becoming larger than life. The streets of Harlem had seen many battles, but this one promised to be remembered for years to come. The days following Max B's alliance with Cam'ron only deepened the tension. Every move in Harlem's rap scene seemed magnified, as if the streets themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the next explosive development. Jim Jones, usually confident and unshakable, began to feel the pressure mounting. While he had always commanded respect, the shifting alliances reminded him that in this world, influence was never guaranteed. Even longtime associates were being forced to evaluate their loyalties, and whispers of secret meetings began circulating through the neighborhoods. One of the most shocking elements of this feud was the subtle yet unmistakable way Max B was consolidating power. Every appearance, every collaboration, and every public statement was carefully calculated to send a message. To outsiders, it might have seemed like casual activity, but those in the know understood the stakes. Cam'ron, a veteran with decades of experience in the rap world, brought credibility, strategy, and street influence that Max B could now leverage. Together, they formed a partnership that no one could ignore. And the implications for Jim Jones were immediate and profound. Social media, as always, acted as the amplifier for every rumor and every revelation. Fans dissected posts, videos, and interviews, looking for hidden meanings or subtle signals of allegiance. Even casual interactions between artists were analyzed to death, creating a pressure cooker atmosphere where every move could be interpreted as support or betrayal. Jim Jones had to navigate this landscape carefully, balancing public appearances with private strategy. One wrong gesture could spark an entirely new wave of speculation, potentially tipping the scales in favor of his rivals. Meanwhile, the legacy and memory of Big U continued to hang over the feud like a shadow. While the earlier funeral rumors had been false, their effect lingered. Discussions about respect, loyalty, and reputation were everywhere. Fans debated, analysts speculated, and the artists themselves had to tread lightly. For Jim Jones, the incident was a stark reminder of how narratives, whether true or fabricated, could influence the trajectory of a conflict. Perception was often more powerful than reality, and controlling that perception was now a critical part of the game. Amidst the tension, Drake's unexpected involvement added another layer of complexity. Though he was not directly tied to the Harlem feud, his presence could legitimize certain alliances and create ripple effects across the rap community. Every subtle gesture or public appearance by Drake became a talking point, fueling theories about who was in his corner and who might be alienated. Jim Jones understood that even someone like Drake, a global superstar, could become a pawn in this high-stakes struggle. Behind closed doors, the strategy sessions intensified. Jim's team, long accustomed to handling conflicts with a mixture of caution and bravado, now faced a new reality. Max B's calculated moves forced them to rethink their approach. Loyalty had to be measured carefully, and trust was a precious commodity. Friends who had previously stood firm now hesitated, weighing the potential risks and rewards of siding with one faction or another. Every decision became a matter of life and death for reputations, careers, and street credibility. The city itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. Neighborhoods, recording studios, and even local hangouts became microcosms of the larger feud. Conversations that once centered on music now revolved around strategy, alliances, and the next inevitable clash. Every day brought a new development. And with each development came speculation about the future of Harlem's rap hierarchy. Jim Jones, for all his experience, found himself navigating uncharted waters. Max B and Cameron, meanwhile, continued to build momentum. Their collaboration was subtle yet effective, sending a clear signal to the community that a new force had emerged. Jim Jones was aware that ignoring them was no longer an option. Every public move, every interaction, every release of music became part of a larger chess game, one where missteps could have lasting consequences. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and the streets watched closely. Aware that they were witnessing history in the making, the drama was no longer confined to social media or behind-the-scenes whispers. Events and appearances became stages for subtle confrontations where body language and tone were scrutinized for meaning. Artists, fans, and even journalists watched with bated breath, trying to interpret the signals and predict the next move. In this environment, silence could speak as loudly as words. And every decision was fraught with significance. Through it all, Jim Jones remained vigilant. He knew that navigating this complex web of alliances, rivalries, and public perception required careful planning. The feud was no longer just a personal matter. It was a test of influence, strategy, and survival in a scene where every move mattered. Harlem's rap landscape was shifting beneath his feet, and how he responded would define not only his legacy, but also the broader story of loyalty and power in the community. As the tension escalated, one thing became clear: the feud had evolved into a full-scale drama, one that was larger than any single artist or event. Max B's moves, Cameron's influence, Drake's unexpected involvement, and the lingering impact of Big U's story had combined to create a narrative that demanded attention. The streets, the fans, and the artists themselves were caught in the whirlwind, watching closely as alliances shifted and strategies unfolded. And so, the story continued, a saga of ambition, loyalty, and the high stakes of influence in Harlem's rap world. Every day brought new developments, and every development carried the potential to change the balance of power. Jim Jones, ever aware of the challenges, remained at the center, prepared to respond, adapt, and fight for his position in a drama that showed no signs of slowing down. The streets of Harlem had never felt more alive or more dangerous. Rumors continued to swirl, fueled by social media, street chatter, and insider leaks. The alliance between Max B and Cameron had grown stronger, and every public appearance was now a calculated move in a larger game of power and influence. Jim Jones, always sharp and strategic, understood that ignoring these signals was no longer an option. The chessboard had expanded, and every piece now mattered. It was during one evening in a well-known Harlem studio that the tension became tangible. Cameras were rolling, lights were blazing, but the energy in the room was unlike any other session. Max B and Cameron were deep in discussion, planning future collaborations and subtle maneuvers that would solidify their dominance. Jim Jones' team, aware of these movements, began mapping out counter-strategies. Every beat produced, every lyric written, and every handshake exchanged was loaded with meaning. To an outsider, it might have seemed like routine business, but in reality, it was the prelude to a storm. Fans were equally invested. Twitter exploded with posts dissecting every move, while YouTube commentators tried to connect dots between appearances, interviews, and music drops. Drake's name continued to circulate with speculation about which side he might lean toward, even though he had not made a direct statement. Every subtle action from a social media post to a casual meeting with another artist was scrutinized for hidden messages. The drama wasn't just in Harlem anymore. It had become national news in the rap world. Meanwhile, the shadow of Big U's funeral continued to loom over the feud. Although the rumors about the funeral were false, the incident highlighted how perception could be weaponized. Friends and associates realized that controlling the narrative was just as important as controlling the music scene itself. Jim Jones, experienced and resilient, understood that managing this aspect was critical. Missteps could not only damage his reputation, but also tilt the balance of power in favor of Max B and Cam. Single quotes Ron. Inside Jim Jones' camp. Strategy sessions were now held daily. Every decision was debated thoroughly, alliances evaluated, potential threats analyzed, and reactions predicted. Even longtime friends found themselves reassessing their loyalties. In this climate of uncertainty, trust was a rare commodity. The line between a friend and a potential rival had blurred completely, and Jim knew that every action, no matter how small, could have major consequences. Max B, on the other hand, appeared calm and collected. Outwardly, he exuded confidence, but there was a subtle intensity in his movements. Every meeting, every social interaction, and every comment carried weight. Cameron's experience added credibility, strategy, and influence, creating a formidable front that few could challenge. The duo's careful planning left little room for mistakes and made it clear that Jim Jones and his allies would need to step up or risk being outmaneuvered. The feud had started to influence music directly. Songs dropped with subtle references, lyrics hinted at alliances, and beats carried hidden messages. Fans and analysts alike began to interpret each verse as a declaration of loyalty or defiance. Every line became a conversation starter, a debate topic, and a clue to the next move. The drama had become embedded in the music itself, creating layers of meaning that went far beyond entertainment. Meanwhile, Drake remained the wild card. Every rumor about his stance created ripples throughout the community. Jim Jones recognized that having Drake's influence, or even just his neutrality, would dramatically impact the feud's direction. The uncertainty around Drake's position kept both camps on edge, forcing careful navigation of public statements, appearances, and social interactions. The drama was no longer just between the original parties. It had expanded into a complex web of influence, perception, and strategy. As tensions grew, Harlem itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. Street corners, studios, and local hangouts became hubs of discussion, debate, and speculation. Artists, fans, and insiders monitored every event, watching for subtle hints and analyzing every gesture. Even casual social media posts could ignite a chain reaction of reactions, opinions, and rumors. Jim Jones understood that the environment itself had become a player in this unfolding drama. Every street, every studio, every interaction mattered. Despite the pressure, Jim Jones remained focused. He continued to strategize, observe, and adapt, knowing that the coming days could define not only his personal legacy but the landscape of Harlem's rap scene. The feud was no longer just a clash between individuals. It had become a story of power, influence, loyalty, and survival. Every action, every alliance, and every decision carried significance. And the stakes had never been higher. The feud's ripple effects extended beyond Harlem. Fans across the country, even internationally, followed every development with bated breath. Every move by Max B and Cameron, every counter-strategy by Jim Jones, and every subtle action by Drake was analyzed, debated, and dissected. The drama had become a spectacle, blending real-life stakes with entertainment, creating a narrative that was impossible to ignore. And as the tension reached a boiling point, one thing became clear: this story was far from over. New alliances would form, loyalties would be tested, and the battle for influence, respect, and legacy in Harlem's rap scene would continue to escalate. Jim Jones, Max B, Cameron, and all those caught in the crossfire knew that the coming days would determine more than just musical dominance. They would shape the history of the PST, of the community itself. The atmosphere in Harlem had reached a fever pitch. Every corner, every studio, and every street seemed electrified with anticipation. The feud between Jim Jones and Max B, intensified by Cam'ron's involvement and the subtle, looming presence of Drake, had transformed from a simmering conflict into a full-blown spectacle. The city's rap scene had never witnessed a power struggle quite like this, and everyone knew that the next moves would be decisive. Inside his headquarters, Jim Jones was laser-focused. Strategy sessions had become the norm, with his closest allies weighing every possible scenario. The challenge was not just confronting Max B and Cam'ron. It was predicting their next steps and maintaining control over the narrative. In this high-stakes game, one misstep could mean losing credibility, influence, or even friends. Every meeting, every handshake, every public appearance was scrutinized. Nothing could be left to chance. Meanwhile, Max B and Cam'ron's alliance had only strengthened. Their subtle collaborations, public appearances, and calculated interactions were creating waves throughout the rap community. Max B's calm demeanor contrasted with the tension surrounding him, a tactic that unnerved both fans and rivals. Cam'ron's decades of experience provided strategic depth, making their alliance formidable. Together, they were reshaping the power dynamics in Harlem, forcing Jim Jones to adapt and evolve like never before. Drake's unpredictable involvement remained a wild card. Though he had not made a definitive public statement, his subtle gestures and interactions continued to fuel speculation. Every appearance he made was analyzed for hidden meaning, with fans and insiders debating which side he might favor. Jim Jones knew that even a single hint from Drake could tip the scales, making him a silent but powerful player in this unfolding drama. The feud began to spill into music, with songs carrying hidden messages, lyrical jabs, and subtle declarations. Fans dissected every verse, every beat, every visual, searching for clues about alliances, betrayals, and the next moves. What started as whispers and rumors had evolved into a multi-layered narrative, blending real-life stakes with entertainment. It was no longer just a feud. It was a story of power, influence, and survival, unfolding in real time. Outside the studios, the streets of Harlem buzzed with conversation. Every interaction between artists, every social media post, and every public sighting was analyzed and debated. Friendships were tested, loyalties questioned, and reputations weighed. Jim Jones, always aware of his surroundings, knew that perception was as important as reality. Controlling the narrative was crucial, not just to protect his legacy, but to ensure his influence remained unchallenged. Then came a critical turning point. A public event brought Jim Jones, Max B, K, and Cam'ron into the same space for the first time since the tension had escalated. The room was charged with energy, every eye watching, every whisper noted. Fans and insiders held their breath, anticipating what could become a defining moment in Harlem's rap history. Would tempers flare? Would alliances shift in an instant? Or would a calculated display of power settle the escalating tension? Jim Jones entered the venue with confidence, projecting calm even as the stakes soared. Max B and Cam'ron, equally poised, acknowledged each other with subtle nods and glances that spoke volumes. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, every gesture laden with meaning. It became clear to all observers that the feud had reached a climax, and the next hours would set the tone for the future of Harlem's rap scene. In a series of controlled interactions, alliances were subtly tested and boundaries established. The feud did not erupt into chaos. Instead, it evolved into a display of power, strategy, and respect. Jim Jones demonstrated leadership and composure, reinforcing his influence, while Max B and Cam'ron maintained their alliance, signaling that they too were players to be reckoned with. The audience, both in person and online, watched every detail, dissecting it for meaning and consequence. The aftermath of the event rippled through the community. Fans debated the outcomes, journalists analyzed every move, and insiders speculated about what might come next. The feud, once a personal battle, had transformed into a narrative about power, strategy, and the delicate balance of influence. Friendships were redefined, loyalties cemented, and reputations solidified. Jim Jones had navigated the storm with skill, proving that experience and composure could withstand even the most calculated challenges in the following weeks. The story continued to influence music, social media, and street conversations. Songs carried subtle nods to the events. Interviews referenced the tension without fully revealing it, and the narrative became part of Harlem's cultural fabric. Max B and Cam'ron's alliance remained a formidable presence, while Jim Jones' resilience and strategic mastery reinforced his status as a central figure in the scene. Ultimately, the feud became more than a conflict between individuals. It was a lesson in loyalty, strategy, and influence. Harlem had witnessed a complex dance of power, where every move mattered and every decision carried weight. Jim Jones, Max B, Cam'ron, and even Drake had played roles in a story that would be remembered long after the headlines faded: the streets. Studios and fans had seen the drama unfold. And one thing was certain: in Harlem, the game of influence and respect never ends. Every alliance, every rivalry, every subtle move adds to the story, a story of ambition, loyalty, and the high stakes of a world where reputation is everything. And as the city returned to its rhythm, the legacy of this feud became part of the ongoing saga, a reminder that, in the rap world, power is temporary, but strategy, vision, and composure define true greatness. Yo, if you're hooked on this drama, make sure you smash that like button. It literally fuels these stories. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose side are you on, Jim Jones or Max B? And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next explosive update from Harlem's rap scene. Trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. It's going to get even crazier, even crazier.